Hey there, all you marvelous musical fans. Welcome back to Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonanni, and this is episode 31 of Broadway Jeopardy. I've got a brand new episode of Broadway Jeopardy every week, so if you like Broadway or theater trivia, make sure and hit that subscribe button so you won't miss an episode. There's 26 all-new Broadway brainbusters waiting for you, so without further ado, let's jump right into this week's game. This is Broadway Jeopardy! Looking at the categories for this week, we start off as always with last week's final Jeopardy round, which is Winter Wonderland, looking at some shows that are set, at least partially, in the cold winter months. After that, we have 1983, looking at some plays and musicals that opened during that year. Then it's Will and Grace. This category has been asked for several times by player David Moreau, so here you go, David, looking at some of the actors who have appeared on the sitcom and their Broadway outings. That's followed by Help! Police, looking at some law enforcement figures in various shows. And last but not least, it's Directly to Jail, a natural progression from Help! Police to jail. This category delves into times where musical characters have found themselves in the clink. And we end as always with the final Jeopardy round, so make sure and keep track of your scores. If you want, remember, I'm your Broadway daddy, not your Broadway father.
Oh, brother.
We start off, of course, with the $200 round, or as I call it, the Overture round, where the questions tend to be a little bit easier to help you rack up some fake dough before I turn the screws with the harder questions later in the game. Starting off with the Winter Wonderland category, your first $200 clue is... The song December 1963, Oh What a Night, is from this long-running jukebox musical about the group The Four Seasons. What is Jersey Boys? The song December 1963, aka Oh What a Night, was originally released by the Four Seasons in 1975, and just like it was used in the musical, it's about a young man losing his virginity. But apparently, the original lyrics proposed by Bob Gaudio had the song titled December 1933, and it was about the end of Prohibition. Frankie Valli wasn't a fan of the lyrics, and Gaudio changed it to what we know today. Looking at a pair of flops in the 1983 category, your next $200 clue is... Long before Smash's Bombshell, two flop musicals about this legendary Hollywood icon opened in 1983, one on Broadway, the other in London. Who is Marilyn Monroe? Yes, in 1983, not one, but two epic flop musicals about Marilyn Monroe took to the stage. The first, titled Marilyn the Musical, opened in London starring Stephanie Lawrence. While the show was panned, Miss Lawrence did get good notices in the title role. The second musical, titled Marilyn An American Fable, opened on Broadway in fall of 1983. This one was apparently bonkers, both on stage and off. The show itself was a highly fictionalized account of Norma Jean Baker, also known as Marilyn Monroe, and featured a trio of women referred to as Destiny, who acted like a Greek chorus commenting on the action. One notorious number called Miss Bubbles saw Marilyn in a bubble bath while the chorus of men in bright pink overalls and lucite monkey wrenches sang to her. One critic said the number was the closest thing he'd ever seen in real life to Springtime for Hitler. Backstage, both the original leading lady, the young girl playing Norma Jean, and the director himself were replaced during the show's 34 previews, and apparently 10 songs and over 45 minutes of dialogue were cut from the musical before opening night. Nothing could rescue this catastrophic evening though, and it closed after only 2 weeks of performances. Moving on to the Will and Grace category gives us the $200 clue. Eric McCormick, the show's titular Will, was a replacement Harold Hill in the 2000 revival of The Music Man, where he belted out the famous song about this many trombones. What is 76? Yes, 76 trombones led the big parade with 110 cornets close at hand. The 2000 revival of The Music Man was the Will and Grace star's Broadway debut. He has returned to Broadway 2 more times, but in plays. Mr. McCormick appeared in a revival of Gore Vidal's The Best Man in 2012, and in the very funny play The Cottage in 2023.
Do you ever wonder what would have happened had I met you first?
I don't need to wonder, I know.
Oh, good, I'm so curious, tell me.
We would have married.
I knew it. If we'd married, we'd be the picture of happiness.
Let's head to the police precinct with the Help Police category and the $200 clue. This police inspector mercilessly pursues Jean Valjean in Les Miserables. Who is Javert? Victor Hugo, the original Les Miserables novelist, described Javert as having only two simple beliefs: respect for authority and a hatred of rebellion. Hugo also said of Javert that his life is one of privations, isolations, self-denial, and chastity, never any amusement. And you know what? If I lived like that, I'd probably lose my mind too. The original Javert in the West End was Roger Allam, while Terrence Mann created the role on Broadway. Norm Lewis took up the chase in the first Broadway revival of Les Mis in 2006, and Will Swenson played the role in the 2014 revival. And finishing up the Overture round with the Directly to Jail category and the $200 clue. In Chicago, Roxy, Velma, and the other merry murderesses are under the watch of this prison matron. Who is Matron Mama Morton, the keeper of the keys, the countess of the clink, the mistress of Murderer's Row? Matron Mama Morton is a very good ally to have if you're locked up in the Cook County Jail, but it will come at a hefty price. With the long-running revival of Chicago, many incredible performers and some reality show stars have put on Matron Mama Morton's pants, including Jennifer Holliday, Bebe Neuwirth, Lillias White, Nene Leakes, Wendy Williams, Roz Ryan, and Jinx Monsoon, to name just a few.
They say that life is tit for tat, and that's the way I live. So I deserve a lot of tat for what I've got to give.
I hope you all pop six squished that first round. Let's move on to the only slightly harder $400 round now. Circling back to Winter Wonderland, your first $400 clue is: Alexander meets his future wife Eliza at a winter's ball in this musical phenomenon from 2015. What is Hamilton? The short number from the long-running show has Burr and Hamilton doing a bit of chauvinistic tomcatting before Alexander meets the Schuyler sisters and his life changes forever.
1780, a winter's ball, and the Schuyler sisters are the envy of all. Yo, if you could marry a sister, your rich son.
Is it a question of if or which one?
Hey,
Hey.
hey.
Taking a time machine back to 1983 gives us the $400 clue. Anthony Quinn appeared in a revival of this Greek set Candor and Ebb musical from 1968. Quinn appeared in the title role, the same role he played in the Academy Award-winning film version from 1964. What is Zorba? Anthony Quinn, who played the title role in the Academy Award-winning film Zorba the Greek in 1964, took to the stage about 20 years later in a lauded revival of the Candor and Ebb adaptation of Zorba, along with Lila Kudrova in the role of Madame Hortense. Miss Kudrova also appeared with Quinn in the original 1964 film in the same role of Madame Hortense, and she won the Oscar for her performance. The successful revival of Zorba in 1983 played just a little bit longer than the original production had in 1968. The $400 clue in the Will and Grace category is: Megan Mullally played Rosemary Pilkington in the 1995 revival of this musical, a satirical look at office life in the 1960s. What is How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying? Megan Mullally, probably the most seasoned theatrical actress between Will and Grace's 4 main cast members, she made her Broadway debut as Marty in the 1994 revival of Grease, before playing Rosemary, the love interest to J. Pierpont Finch in How to Succeed, in that revival played by Matthew Broderick.
I'll be so happy to keep his dinner warm while he goes onward and upward. Happy to keep his dinner warm till he comes wearily home from downtown.
Let's see if some police can help you with the $400 clue. This 2012 London stage adaptation of the Whitney Houston movie of the same name featured the songs I Have Nothing, Queen of the Night, and I Will Always Love You. What is The Bodyguard? As the clue stated, The Bodyguard played London's West End in 2012, starring the amazing Heather Headley in the leading role of Rachel Marin. The musical version changed the primary focus of the story to Rachel instead of her bodyguard, and beefed up the role of her sister as well. Besides all the hit songs from the film, the musical added even more Whitney Houston songs, including So Emotional, I'm Your Baby Tonight, and I Wanna Dance with Somebody. After Heather Headley left the show, Beverly Knight assumed the leading role. The X Factor winner Alexandra Burke played the role when the show closed in 2014. In the final $400 clue in the directly to jail category is... In The Producers, Max Bialystock gets an upsetting postcard which sends him into this 11 o'clock number while in jail. What is Betrayed is the answer. This epic solo in the jail cell is a tour de force number where Max reflects on the events which led him to prison. Literally, he basically recaps the whole show at one point. If done right, the song brings down the house. Exactly what you want from an 11 o'clock number.
Then you ran to Rio and you're safely out of reach. I'm behind these bars, you're begging ooh-la on the beach. And just like Julius Caesar was betrayed by Brutus, who'd think an accountant would turn out to be my Judas.
Dashing right into the $600 round now with the Winter Wonderland category and the clue. The song Once Upon a December is from this animated film turned stage musical set in Russia. What is Anastasia? The sweeping song Once Upon a December, along with Journey to the Past, were the big breakout songs from the 1997 animated film and 2017 stage musical.
Figures dancing gracefully across my memory. Far away, long ago, glowing dim as ever.
The $600 clue for the 1983 category is... In Jerry Herman and Harvey Firestein's La Cage aux Folles, when Albin is in drag, he is known by this stage name. What is Zaza? The original Albin/Zaza on Broadway was George Hearn, probably best known today to most theater nerds for playing Sweeney Todd in the filmed version of the musical along with Angela Lansbury. Gary Beach, the original Lumiere in the stage version of Beauty and the Beast, and Roger Debris in The Producers led the first Broadway revival in 2005 as Albin/Zaza, and British actor Douglas Hodge played the role in the third Broadway revival in 2010. Later in that same production, the musical's book writer Harvey Firestein assumed the role of Albin to great acclaim. Looking at a reoccurring actor in the Will and Grace category gives us the $600 clue. Eileen Brennan, who played Jack's acting teacher Xandra on the sitcom, originated the role of Irene Malloy in Hello Dolly, introducing this solo sung by the character in her hat shop. What is Ribbons Down My Back? A beautiful and soft number in the musical full of vim and vigor. While I mean no disrespect to the incomparable Miss Brennan, for me, Kate Baldwin's version of the song from the 2017 revival has to be my favorite version of the song ever. Locking up the $600 clue in the Help Police category gives us, in this 8-performance flop, Bob Purifoy, a bumbling beat cop, gets himself involved with the high society girl Alice Van Gilder, who has a big secret of her own. What is Drat the Cat? One of my favorite flops. I know I've mentioned it before in another episode. Bob Purifoy, played by Elliot Gould, is the son of famed Chief of Detectives Roger Bulldog Purifoy, who kicks the bucket in the opening scene, but not before telling his unskilled, accident-prone son, Bob, to uphold the law. Again, you know I gotta plug my Broadway breakdowns, but I am fairly proud of my breakdown for Drat the Cat, with the full history and plot of this obscure show. And getting the next clue wrong will send you directly to jail. The last $600 clue is, this 2002 musical referred to jail as The Big Dollhouse. What is Hairspray? In the original Broadway production of Hairspray, the song The Big Dollhouse, which finds the women in the show locked up following the protest of the Corny Collins show, opened Act 2. If you aren't familiar with the song, that may be because it was cut from both the 2007 big screen adaptation of the musical, as well as the live TV version from 2016. I think it's time to really turn up the difficulty level with the $800 round. But before we do, you know what's coming. Please, oh pretty please, hit that like button for me if you're enjoying this week's game. It really helps out with YouTube showing these videos to more fine folks like yourselves, but also makes me feel like a million fake dollars. Thank you so much, everyone. I truly do appreciate it. Okay, $800 round, here we go. Going walking in a winter wonderland brings us the $800 clue. Cheetah Rivera sang the song Winter in this 2015 musical with a score by Kander and Ebb. What is The Visit is the correct answer. The Visit was a musical that had been around for a while before reaching Broadway. The dark musical drama was originally announced to come to Broadway way back in 2001, then to star Angela Lansbury. Miss Lansbury left the show due to her husband's illness, and Cheetah Rivera took on the role, which played a tryout in Chicago in 2001. Miss Rivera also starred in productions in Virginia in 2008 and Massachusetts in 2014 before the show finally bowed on Broadway. The musical, with a book by Terrence McNally, is a fascinating story of Claire, the world's wealthiest woman who returns to the destitute small town she grew up in. She agrees to financially rescue the town and its inhabitants if they agree to murder Anton, a member of the town who jilted Claire when they were young lovers. Looking at a straight play now in the 1983 category with the $800 clue. While Carrie was a massive musical flop, this mystery farce stage play from 1983 flopped so hard that all other flops are still compared to it to this day. What is Moose Murders? The play by Arthur Bricknell has achieved legendary status for awfulness since its brief stint in 1983. The play's original star, Eve Arden, left the show after the first preview, citing artistic differences, which apparently is another way to say that she couldn't remember any of her lines. The wonderful actress Holland Taylor replaced her. The critics, as you might imagine, were brutal. The critic from The New Yorker said the play would insult the intelligence of an audience consisting entirely of amoebas, and Clive Barnes of The New York Post said that the evening was so indescribably bad that he wouldn't waste anyone's time by trying to explain the plot. Though he did commend Miss Arden for leaving the production so soon, saying, "Some people have all the luck." After 13 previews, Moose Murders closed on its opening night. Let's turn on the Will and Grace category and the $800 clue. Sean Hayes, who played Jack on the sitcom, made his Broadway debut in 2010, starring in the revival of Promises, Promises, playing this role. Who is Chuck Baxter is the correct answer. Chuck Baxter works for Consolidated Life Insurance Company, and he makes a name for himself there by letting the company executives use his apartment for their extramarital dalliances. But things get complicated when Chuck finds the girl he has a crush on in his apartment after such a dalliance with the big boss, and she has tried to unalive herself, as the kids say. I promise you it's a musical comedy, but, you know, promises, promises.
I get it. Comedy.
The $800 clue for the Help Police category is... In the musical Urinetown, Little Sally asks many questions of this character, a police officer and the show's narrator. Who is Officer Lockstock? Officer Lockstock, originated by Jeff McCarthy, is in charge of rounding up anyone breaking the law by peeing anywhere but the public amenities. Along with his partner, Officer Barrel, they take anyone who breaks the law to Urinetown, a place from which no one returns. The hilarious and witty musical will be seen again soon in New York City, as City Center Encores is presenting the show next, starring Jordan Fisher, Kayla Settle, The Office's Rainn Wilson, and Taran Killam as Officer Lockstock. And going directly to jail, the $800 clue there is... In this musical drama, Valentin lands in an Argentinian prison along with Molina, who has visions of Aurora, a movie legend who takes on many roles, including the title one. What is Kiss of the Spider-Woman? The musical, with a book by Terrence McNally and a score by Kander and Ebb, first opened in Toronto and then London. It then transferred to Broadway, starring Anthony Crivello as Valentin and Brent Carver as Molina, and the great Cheetah Rivera as Aurora/the Spider-Woman. All three of the leads would win Tony Awards for their efforts that year. Kiss of the Spider-Woman got a rare replacement cast recording during its run when Vanessa Williams assumed the title role for Miss Rivera. Also heard on that second cast recording are Howard McGillen as Molina and Brian Mitchell before he added the Stokes to his name as Valentin. Alright, my friends, it's that time. We've reached the main event, the big show. It's the $1,000 round. Give me that dramatic music. Best of luck, players. Our last stroll through the Winter Wonderland category brings us the $1,000 clue. The song It's a Nice Cold Morning is from this 1968 flop musical starring Shirley Jones and Jack Cassidy. What is Maggie Flynn? A bit of a deep cut musical there. Set against the backdrop of the New York draft riots of 1863, Maggie Flynn was about a woman who runs an orphanage for black children after the Civil War. After her first husband abandoned her to seek out a life in the theater, Maggie marries the dependable Colonel Faraday. But complications ensue when Maggie's first husband, played by Jack Cassidy, returns for her. The book for the musical was by Morton DaCosta, primarily known as a director who directed, among others, the stage and screen versions of Auntie Mame and The Music Man. In the ensemble of young actors making their debuts in the show playing orphans was Irene Cara, Stephanie Mills, and Giancarlo Esposito. Looking at a revival in the 1983 category with the $1,000 clue. A Tony-winning revival of this 1936 musical from Rodgers and Hart starred Christine Andreas, George de la Peña, and Natalie Makarova. What is On Your Toes? The 1936 Rodgers and Hart musical contains the songs There's a Small Hotel, Glad to Be Unhappy, the title song On Your Toes, and the ballet Slaughter on 10th Avenue, which ends the musical. The original idea for the show was a movie musical starring Fred Astaire, but the plot gave no reason for Astaire to don his signature tie and tails and be a debonair, so he turned it down. Ray Bolger ended up opening the show on Broadway, sending him to stardom and his next role, that of the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. The finale clue for the Will and Grace category for $1,000 is Blythe Danner, who played Will's mother on the show, sang the song The Story of Lucy and Jessie in a 2001 revival of this musical. What is Follies? In 2001, the Roundabout Theatre Company staged the first Broadway revival of Stephen Sondheim's Follies. Besides Miss Danner, the cast included Treat Williams, Judith Ivey, Kelly O'Hara, Polly Bergen, Louis Peoples is Peoples Zurich,
Peoples is Peoples,
Betty Garrett, and Joan Roberts, the original Laurie in Oklahoma. I saw this production, and though it apparently wasn't well received by critics and audiences, I was young and in awe of the legends I was seeing on stage, and I loved every second of it.
I've slept in shanties, guest of the WPA, but I'm here. Danced in my scanties, $3 a night was the pay, but I'm here. I've stood in bread lines with the best, watched while the headlines did the rest. In the Depression, was I depressed? Nowhere near. I met a big financier, and I'm here.
Looking at a great Golden Age musical now in the Help Police category with the $1,000 clue. The song I Love a Cop is from this Tony-winning musical from 1959. What is Fiorello? In the Tony-winning musical about one of New York City's most consequential mayors, Fiorello LaGuardia, there is a B-plot involving Dora, a friend of Marie, the love interest to Fiorello, who gets into a scuffle with a police officer named Floyd, and they eventually fall for each other. Here is a clip of the song sung by Marjorie Gray, who was a replacement Dora in the original production, who then became Mrs. Sheldon Harnick, who wrote the lyrics for the show.
I love a cop. I love a cop. What a situation, ain't it awful? Life is really grim. I can only say that it's unlawful how I feel towards him.
And the curtain call clue in the directly to jail category for $1,000 is Blanche tells her husband Buck, "You're going back to jail," after he broke out along with his brother in this musical. What is Bonnie and Clyde? Besides the obvious focus in the Frank Wildhorn musical being set on the infamous outlaws Clyde Barrow and Bonnie Parker, the show also follows Clyde's brother Marvin, aka Buck, and his wife Blanche. On Broadway, Buck was originated by Claiborne Elder, a wonderful actor who made his Broadway debut with the show, and Melissa Vandershift created the role of Blanche. The equally impressive Miss Vandershift has worked many times with the Deaf West Theatre Company, including in the Broadway revival of Big River that I've mentioned before. Her performance in Bonnie and Clyde was acclaimed, and her singing voice compared to none other than Dolly Parton.
I want the world to see that I ain't there to somebody. It will be hard for us, but we'll come through.
I can't believe what you are asking me to do.
One thing's for certain, our love won't go stray.
And now we've reached the final Jeopardy round. Time to tally up those scores and decide how confident you feel in the category Lin-Manuel Miranda. Next Thursday is Lin's birthday, so to celebrate, Lin is getting his own category. Again. Yes, this is the first returning category from a past episode. This one from way back in episode 2. While each episode's 26 questions will of course always be brand new, I do think it's time to start bringing back some past categories. So many of them have multitudes of possible clues, and it seemed a shame to not revisit some categories. So unless you guys object, categories will repeat from time to time. Back to the matter at hand, has everyone made their wagers? Jeff? Gina? Marty? Okay, here is your final clue. Lin wrote additional lyrics for this recent new musical with a score by Kander and Ebb, loosely based on the 1977 Martin Scorsese film of the same name. What is New York, New York? New York, New York, the stage show opened on Broadway in spring of 2023, starring Colton Ryan, Anna Uzel, and Emily Skinner. New York, New York is one of several Kander and Ebb musicals to premiere after the death of lyricist Fred Ebb in 2004, which is why Lin-Manuel Miranda provided additional lyrics for the musical. The show received mixed to negative reviews when it opened, but it did receive 9 Tony nominations, including Best Musical, winning 1 for its staggering scenic design. And that's this week's game! How did you all fare this week? Did you pass go and collect your $200, or did you go
right to jail, right away?
Be sure to let me know in the comments. You know I love hearing from you guys and seeing how you did. Thank you a million times over to my incredible patrons over on Patreon. I am reorganizing things over there soon, so if you want to check that out and see what kind of perks you can get, there is a link in the video description as well as to my merch shop. I will be back next week though with episode 32 of Broadway Jeopardy, but until then, I'm Mark Bonanni. This is Broadway by Ghostlight. Thanks for playing.